Conference will now be recorded.
Okay.
All right, everybody. Today is Monday, December 7th, 2020. It is 4 p.m. A little late today because of some technical issues on my end, but we're happy to get started here. This is the Lincoln County Board of Commissioners meeting. We have all three commissioners here virtually, and I will go ahead and call this meeting to order. We do have all three commissioners in attendance, so we have a quorum. First up, our adoption of the consent calendar. These are items of a routine nature, but either commissioners or staff can pull an item for further discussion. And I'll have Christy or Casey kind of scroll down so we can see what's on our consent calendar. And if there's no need for further discussion, I'll entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, I'd move for adoption of the consent calendar as presented.
I'll second it.
All right, all in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All right, motion passes. All right, next up on to reports. We're going to start with the Echo Mountain Complex fire update. Council Belmont, are you providing that update for us today?
I am, Commissioners, and good afternoon. Wayne Belmont, County Council. I just want to note before I go into a little explanation of where we're at that we do have an action item down under decision and action. The second item there relates to services we're going to be asking you to authorize us to negotiate. Related to both the Echo Mountain Complex fire emergency and COVID, but I'll talk about that more later. So specifically, just in terms of the updates we're doing now, a lot of activities involving a number of you as well as staff as we really are pivoting to the recovery phase of what we're doing with the Echo Mountain Fire. Housing is and remains a major concern for us, both on the short-term basis, on a more interim basis, and then long-term. And so we've got a number of activities that we're doing that relate to that. First, the FEMA housing mission, which we've discussed over the last several meetings, is moving forward. That will provide some direct housing assistance to a number of people who are survivors of the fire. A location has been picked, and that's being reviewed very heavily right now by the federal agencies to ensure that we can get all the services we need as well as the housing units placed at that location. We also have, we're standing up a long-term recovery group that's looking at specifically what we can do with our various public and private partners in recovery in the Echo Mountain Complex area. And then there's some offshoots of that that deal with putting together really some responses that we can do long-term with trying to better organize the incredible amount of volunteer services. I know there's been a lot of press that's out there right now that talks about the volunteers that have come together to assist the victims of the fire. And it's an incredible story when told in whole, but we'd like to actually take that incredible amount of volunteerism and make it part of our emergency response in the future when things happen, as well as what's happening here. Also, we're meeting on a regular basis. I know you all have made trips up north to talk to survivors of the fire. We're also trying to connect with some of the community groups right here for listening sessions with the survivors of the fire to see how we're doing it, putting together the services they need and what we can do to help. So a lot of work going on there. The state-led process of cleanup continues with some additional boots on the ground activities taking place beginning this month to do what they're calling step 2 of the cleanup, and that's moving forward. And so we anticipate there's going to be even more extensive efforts at cleanup and comprehensive efforts at cleanup that are going to occur in the near future to try and get the properties back to where they can either rebuild or replace the structures that were lost. That involves a number of agreements that we enter into with a variety of parties that we do directly as well as the state and the feds. So you'll see things come across your desk or in some of the activities and actions we take as part of these board meetings that relate to all of that cleanup effort. One of the things I'd really like to talk about is and I think it's important to get this out there, is we've launched what's known as a core team for services, not just actually for the victims of the fire, but also for people who've been stressed over an incredibly long period of time by a response to the COVID epidemic. And CORE stands for Community Outreach and Recovery Effort, and it's led by our behavioral health department, and it has a variety of services that are doing outreach for mental health needs for victims of both wildfire and COVID-19. And I'd actually encourage at some point, maybe we can do this in one of the next meetings, is have folks from behavioral health actually come forward and talk about that in more detail, because it's really, I think, a great set of services and much needed that we're putting out into the community. I know that our mental health folks are, for instance, going to be meeting for wildfire victims at the Grange up in North County, actually to have some services that are provided directly to folks in those areas. So that's an important part of the response and recovery effort here. And then again, I'm going to talk a little bit more about some of the aspects of dealing with FEMA and in both COVID and in the fire emergency later on, when we seek to get some additional services to assist us in all the things that we're doing. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, I have one question that might both be for yourself and maybe I saw Sheriff Landers popped in and joined us. I think we had a survey that went out last week, kind of out to the community, asking about people's various involvement in long-term recovery and maybe interest in being, having more formal involvement. Is that survey still open?
I actually don't know the answer. Maybe the sheriff does. I think it might still be open. I have not seen any results from the survey yet.
I don't know either, but I'll try to check while we're on this and get back to you.
Okay, yeah, I think it may be, but I don't want to misspeak. And if it is open, I just want to remind people that, a good opportunity if you're involved or already, or maybe want to be involved, that's a good way for us to kind of know who you are and what you're doing and how you may fold into our longer term recovery efforts.
Katie.
And certainly if we miss the survey, that doesn't mean you can't email and say you're interested. Yes, Casey?
Yeah, it's still open, and I don't know the exact number of responses yet, but we've gotten quite a few, so it's looking pretty promising.
It is open. Okay, Casey, where do people find that on our website?
It should be in North Lincoln Rebuilds under What's New. I believe it's a few links down from the top there. So.
Okay, thank you, Casey. That's all my. Oh yes, go ahead, Commissioner Hall.
I just wondered if I could report something under the heading of fire update and housing. This is something that the county is not the direct lead on, but we're a partner and supporter. And that is the application by the nonprofit Northwest Coastal Housing to purchase a motel in Lincoln City to use for short-term, or intermediate term, I guess I would say, housing for individuals and families displaced by the fire. And some very good news on Friday. Now, I just want to emphasize to people, this doesn't mean it's a done deal yet, but it's a multi-step application process, basically 3 steps. And the first step was kind of a preliminary review by Oregon Community Foundation to make sure that each application hit all the qualifiers and whether or not it should move forward into a more comprehensive due diligence process. And I worked a lot with Sheila Stiley as a Northwest Coastal Housing Board member to assist her in getting this big application together. And Friday evening, word came from Oregon Community Foundation that we've passed phase 1 with flying colors and are now moving into the phase 2 review.
Wonderful. Yeah, I saw that news as well come out late Friday and just very exciting. Hopefully we'll continue to be successful in that. Commissioner Hunt, any questions or things to report about fire?
Well, first of all, I'm kind of superstitious, so I'm cautiously optimistic, but certainly the initiative that Northwest Coastal Housing is a part of is a positive. I'd like to go back to cores and, or core. And I know that Director Austin is participating in this meeting, and I would like to suggest that if at all possible, a presentation be made to this board next Monday. At this time of year, the services of core, I think, could be extraordinarily valuable. And I'd also ask that maybe the discussion include broader aspects of behavioral health services that are available, not only at this time when we're experiencing a lot of stress in all of our lives, but more generally throughout the year through the county. So Director Austin, would you please work with Co-Director McBee Wilson, and if at all possible, and unless my fellow commissioners feel differently, I think it would be very appropriate to have a presentation next Monday.
I would second that request. If staff is able to do that, I think that would be very helpful for us and educating the public at large.
I would agree as well.
I will take care of that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just the last thing I would add to fire is been working internally and externally on trying to kind of create the procedures, but also the internal capacity to do our MAST, which is basically a process for transitioning from Red Cross sheltering at hotels into state sheltering, which takes place on the 31st. So there's a process the state has asked all counties, wildfire counties, to do, which is basically for lack of a better word, kind of an interview process with survivors to better assess needs, potential resources that maybe have been accessed or have not been accessed. So working both internally to kind of identify someone to take the lead on that for us, but also working with DHS to better understand this process. There has been some other counties that have not quite completed, but are a little bit ahead of us in this. And so we have some lessons learned from them in terms of how that process have been going. It's a new model for doing this. And obviously with COVID, it's done in a virtual setting, which is also a new model being done in the US for other kinds of disasters. So there definitely was some lessons learned and letting some other counties go first that we can learn from. So trying to kind of get that process together so that we can start slowly moving our survivors through that process and hopefully access resources for them that have not already been tapped. All right, anything else on fire? Sheriff Landers, anything you wanted to add from the emergency management end of things?
No, I think I didn't hear the beginning conversation. I'm sorry, I was late coming from another meeting, but I think it's covered, or it's going to be covered in the decision and action, I think would be the only other thing I'd bring up.
Okay. Commissioner Hall, did I see you wave your hand, or was that my imagination? Okay.
No, you weren't imagining. I just wanted to maybe kind of amplify on your last point, Chair Jacobson. You know, at least the people I talk to in the North County community, I know there has been a lot of anxiety about this handoff from the Red Cross to Oregon DHS for sheltering of people who continue to be in need of shelter. And I think what I'm hearing from you, and just please tell me, and I've heard from other staff, is that, you know, that nobody, you know, the intent is that nobody falls through the cracks. Nobody gets told Happy New Year, you're on the street now, that we're, you know, even though it's a process between the Red Cross and the state, that we're very much at the table, involved, advocating, and doing our very best to make sure that that this is a smooth handoff. Is that a fair way to characterize it?
I would agree with that statement. And Council Belmont and Sheriff Landers were also on that call with DHS. So I'll see if there's anything else they would like to add. But yes, I would agree with you. That's the intent.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's what we got from the call. That's definitely the intent. Not to, like as you put it, make that Happy New Year going in 2021, starting on a bad foot like that. So no, that's what I got out of that. That's the intention, and they're working toward that.
Yes, you covered it.
All right, if there's nothing else on fire, we will go ahead and move on to B, Lincoln County Public Health COVID-19 update. And I think it's going to be presented by Director Austin today. I don't see Florence on. I will say, out of all our agenda items, I'm probably the most worried about this one. I have been watching the numbers of our cases this week on our daily reports, as I know other commissioners and leadership does, as well as citizens, and I'm very worried. So let's hear the update.
Yes, we probably can get the award for going into 2021 on the worst foot possible. Sorry to say, everybody. Hi, it's Rebecca Austin. And I am stepping in for Florence, who is super busy right now supporting the team and all the work they're doing. We are and have been for the last 2 weeks in surge mode, and we continue to more or less exponentially increase in cases each week. So I can give you want the numbers now, or what do you want? Does that sound good?
Sure, let's do numbers.
Okay. So remember the first half of November, we had a case rate of 44 cases per 100,000. The latter part of the last 2 weeks of November, we had a case rate of 161 per 100,000. And the last 2 weeks, we included the last week in November to get a 2 weeks, so we're doing kind of bananas to bananas. We have a case rate of 281 per 100,000. So it's not quite exponentially, but we're getting there. So it's more than likely that next week, so the first 2 weeks of December, is the time frame that they'll use to reassess everybody's risk category. So we're thinking at the rate we're going, and if the weekend is in the indicator, we are definitely headed for the extreme risk category. So that means that anything over 200 cases per 100,000 will put us back into the extreme. And so that's not good. We're kind of bouncing in the wrong direction here. But I guess the good news, or the good side of it, is that we're still able to do all the tracing. We are in, like I said, surge mode, and the team has gotten really organized and has a surge phases. So certain people in the department are fit into surge 1. So anything over 5 cases a day, we tap into surge 1 group, and then we go into surge 2 group, and then eventually into surge 3 group. And we just move through those seamlessly based on how many cases we have and how many people we need to follow up with. Currently, what did I hear from Florence? That we have 100 and, let's say 50. That what I wrote down. Where did I write that down? I think we have about 150 cases that we're following up on. So those are all the contacts. So that's getting a little hefty as well. So in other words, we need people desperately to trim back who they're in contact with, because that list is getting a little overwhelming for us. Let's see. Oh, 154, I'm sorry. We had 154 that we are monitoring and 20 that Selects is monitoring. So those are all contacts that we check in with pretty regularly. And let's see, what else?
A question, if I could. Excuse
yeah,
me.
sure.
When you said Selects, is that Confederated Tribes of the Selects, their health program?
Yes, so they are doing contact tracing for people that are testing positive that come out of their clinic. So they're
Okay.
doing the contact tracing for that, which I think also includes, no, I better not say that. I know we have an outbreak at the casino, but I think we took that one on. So we're doing quite a partnership with them, kind of tossing things back and forth based on who has what capacity. But they're actively monitoring 20 people that are contacts right now for us. So you can see the graph here, and Susan has added another line, which, tell you the truth, I don't really understand what she did, but the dotted line is maybe a better representation of the trend. It's not a straight line. You can see it's kind of a curvy line. So, and it's above the straight line or the linear line. So that she thinks that gives us a better picture of where we're going. The linear line tends to be, favor the lower side of things. So this is more, the red dotted line is kind of more where we are headed. And unless Susan's on the line, don't ask me anything more about that, because I think that's something she came up with, and we didn't have, at the last minute, we didn't have time to really go over it. But I think it is helpful to see that either the linear or the curvy line is definitely going in the wrong direction right now. And that's pretty much true for the whole state. We still are doing really well on our hospitalizations though, so that's some good news. Kind of looking for the silver lining here. It's a little challenging. Is there any other questions before I go into a few other things that we're doing?
I do, but I'm going to wait till the end, so keep going.
Okay, so I just wanted to let you know that we are setting up 2 new mass testing for the county, and we're hoping to do this on a regular basis, at least once a week. So we have 2 dates that we are committed to, December 23 and December 30th. And more information will be coming out about each of those. They'll be in 2 different locations in the county. And like I said, we're hoping to be able to do this weekly through the winter at least. So just be looking for more information about that. And I think that's all I had. So
Thank you for that. So here's a couple of questions I have. So we obviously are in a surge, as you said earlier, and we're continuing to see a pretty high, positivity rate. Are those more recent positives still related to the surge we had a couple of weeks ago? Are those contacts that are now being tested that are coming up positive? Or are we still spinning out into other outbreaks in the community?
we are still spinning out into other outbreaks in the community.
Okay, and then I know we do have some community acquired cases, and I know as you have more positives in your community, you end up usually having more community acquired cases as well. So are we seeing that play a large role in our cases?
It's kind of all over the place, Commissioner Jacobson. We're seeing outbreaks continue to happen. We had 10 over the last 10 days. And we have a lot of community transmission. And we're probably just starting to see the results of Thanksgiving. That's just now starting to creep up on us.
Yeah. All right, my last question is just from a internal capacity load. It sounds like you've put some internal, procedures in place to help. I know we have retired CD nurses on board, but are we to the point where we need to be asking OHA for help, or is there anything else we need to do to make sure internally we are able to carry the load as we see that line potentially continue to increase?
Well, I check in with the team pretty regularly, and today we had a meeting about our Surge 3 staff, which are our maternal child health nurses and other staff. And so I think we're in pretty good shape. They said I didn't need to move forward with hiring or finding anybody else to help us out. We did just hire 2 new contact tracers this week. They're both in place and starting to train them up. And so I think the team is feeling pretty secure with the organization that they put into place last week, that they have got this. So we're staying on top of it the best we can, because everybody knows that it does take a while to get people trained up. So yeah, I think so far we're in good shape. And I do want to just remind you, I mean, talking about silver linings, we're in such better shape now than we were back in June, when we're just kind of churning along now. And even though it's challenging, you know, to keep a positive attitude every day when you're doing the same thing and hearing some pretty horrendous stories. People are managing. A lot of our staff are part-time. Like you said, the retired nurses that are helping us out. So I think that is helpful, because they can come in pretty fresh and give the rest of our team a little break. But we are really trying hard to make sure that we don't burn people out. It's kind of like our mantra. What can we do so we don't burn people out? So,
Good.
so far, so
to,
good.
yeah, it does feel, at least internally, a little bit different than last time. And, you know, unfortunately, this is not our first rodeo. So we have been down this before. But I'm hoping, as I said in meetings previously, that, you know, our community has come down from high cases in the past. And I hope, you know, people heed the messages we always talk about each week, and we can get our caseload to come down as well. I would very much like to go back to being in our bubble as we were previously. So hopefully we'll get there.
That would be fabulous indeed.
All right, Commissioner Hunt, any questions or comments for Rebecca?
Couple of questions. Did I miss the data as far as hospitalizations?
You know, Commissioner, I did not refer to our data dashboard on the website, because it's not completely updated. But I don't believe we have anybody in the hospital right now that's COVID positive.
And I guess I'll share my frustration with the change in the way OHA is reporting information due to the change in how counties will be classified. I'm not getting the number of tests that are being done, which frankly makes me a little uncomfortable. Am I missing something? Is the state going to start reporting that, or am I just going to have to lump it?
The one thing that Florence told me today is that I do believe that's going to be coming back up, but they are changing how they calculate our positivity rate. So let's see if I can explain it. They used to, the denominator used to be how many people got tested over how many people tested positive. And now it's going to be, the denominator is going to be how many tests were given. So in other words, some people may get multiple tests, and before we were only counting them once. So now if they get multiple tests, they're going to, so in other words, we should see our testing go up. Our testing number, the denominator go up. Which it'll be interesting to see what that does to our positivity rate. Probably will bring it down a little bit, I suspect.
Intuitively, do you feel there is a statistically significant number of people that have been tested more than once?
I can't really say for our county. I know it's been a bigger issue for larger counties.
Yeah, I was asking about our county, and
Yeah.
I would agree with your assessment.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to affect us terribly, but, and you know, we have really been trying to get the message out that, and a lot of employers early on wanted to have their employees test again before they came back to work. Remember that? And we really discourage that because your test can show that you're positive for quite a long time after you're no longer contagious. So it didn't feel like it was an appropriate thing to do. So I think we got that message out pretty clearly early on. So I'm not real clear who is getting multiple tests. And it could be that people are contacts and they go get tested and it comes back negative, and then they might have symptoms a few days later and they go get tested again. So it could be a scenario like that. And so now we're going to be counting each time they get a test.
So that's a good segue then. I, like many, was tested during the last mass test event. Should I get tested again when I was tested negative at the last event?
I think only in this case if you have concerns that you might have come in contact, or if you're having symptoms. I think that's the problem with the test. You know, it is a point in time. But, and I know the community is concerned about their status, so that's why we keep offering these mass testing sites. But really, I would prefer if people who had contacts or were concerned that they had contact utilize the free testing.
That makes a lot of sense to me. I think at this point, that's all the questions I have. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right, Commissioner Hall, questions or comments for Rebecca?
Yeah, I do have a question for Rebecca, and this might be something big to throw at you cold. So, you know, if you just want to give this some thought and maybe get back to us. I have been hearing from a lot of constituents with real and I think understandable anxiety about this continuing surge, and they're asking whether we as local government can do anything to contain it. You know, I think about the governor's suggestion that people report large gatherings at their neighbors and how much really strong negative pushback that provoked. And yet, you know, I had a call from a woman who said she had pictures that over Thanksgiving weekend at the large short-term rental next door to her, she said she counted 23 people on the deck of the unit. People are saying, you know, even though my sense is overall compliance enforcement by businesses is very good. I continue to get scattered reports of outliers, and you know, I saw an article to the effect that Oregon OSHA, which has been charged with enforcement against businesses that violate the governor's executive orders, that even though they have made some high-profile fines for repeated and willful violations, they're kind of stretched thin. So I see a matter of, you know, what the extent of our authority is. When we did do a temporary curtailment of short-term lodging in the spring, we had to get all the cities to sign on to that. And also, you know, the framework, you know, that realistically, is there anything that we could be doing as a matter of policy, and whether, you know, I guess the effort would produce, you know, significant enough results to justify any kind of steps in that direction?
Well, Commissioner, that sounds like more of a Councilor Belmont question to me. I think public health is doing all we can do. And, just really trying to urge everybody to remember that this is a team sport and we all need to be responsible and, participate in the restrictions that we're under. And I agree that I think, for the most part, people are abiding by it. I just think it's a hard thing to do. I mean, more and more we're seeing, fines being levied at individuals that are not following the rules. Some businesses are getting fined, just not here necessarily in Oregon, but you see it nationally in the news. Because I think, that Oregon is still considering all the things that are going on. Oregon's still doing a pretty good job, even though this is a surge that we've not ever seen before in our state. So I think it's, I don't know. I don't know how to answer that question. I wish I
realize
did.
it's a lot to chew on, but I don't know, maybe Mr. Belmont could give us some thoughts at some point, again, along these lines.
Sure. And I think that actually what you're talking about here is reflected in the fact that we have a new framework. Really, it's the risk and protection framework that the state has rolled out. And it recognizes, different sets of requirements depending on which of the areas which risk level you fall in. So I think part of it is there's an opportunity to see how that actually impacts that, because you have to look at this on a broader scale. Yes, there's going to be a lot of individual circumstances that everybody can show you examples of where somebody has not complied, but there's a lot of examples where people are complying. And the real question is, does this framework, is it going to work for us to actually slow the surge? And so I think there's going to be a lot of discussion around, does that framework work? And is it something that really is going to be effective on a go forward basis? So I think we need to give it an opportunity it's just now in place, and we need to give it an opportunity to see if it works. I think, as Director Austin said, and if you look at the trending here in Lincoln County, the next report is we could go into the extreme risk category. That does have implications for the kinds of activities we in the community can engage in. And so there will be some other things that happen out there. But for me, I see this framework as being, again, allowing for some flexibility depending on what's happening in individual counties. But it also has some pretty stringent requirements on us if we continue down the path we're going.
Well, I'd like to at least request maybe that this be a back burner item, and as we are continuing to do, really monitoring the trends. And if we're another 2, 3, 4 weeks out and we're continuing to surge at this point, as I say, I don't know if there's anything that we can and should do as a matter of policy, but I think at least it would be incumbent on us to have the discussion. And that's all I've got right now. Thank you, everybody.
Oh, yes, I would agree with you, Commissioner. And maybe if we don't see a decline the week of the 14th, which would be our 2 weeks out from Thanksgiving, maybe we can talk more about other measures we can take. But I think, like Wayne said, it's really up to us. That's the nice thing about the framework, is if the county can lower the transmission rate and get our numbers down, we can open more things up. So it's really incumbent upon all of us. If we want our county open and we want our businesses to survive, then it's up to us to toe the line here and not have these parties and protect our coworkers when we're at work and things like that. That's how we're going to bend this. So it's really up to all of us.
Yeah, and with that, I would just say, with upcoming holidays approaching, both Christmas and New Year's and Hanukkah and others times where people typically gather, just another opportunity to say that this is just a year of doing things differently, and hopefully we can, bring down those gathering sizes and change tradition a little bit this year, and hopefully not see a large burst of cases after the new year.
Exactly.
All right.
Chair Jacobson,
okay.
I have a follow-up question for Director Austin, and I guess Council Belmont, but I was trying to find the email, but I believe that OHA pulled the data for our county for the last 2 weeks today, and there will be a press release tomorrow indicating what level of risk the county would be at as a warning for what potentially could occur next week. Is that correct? In other words, this week is a warning, but next week on the 14th, the data for the 2 weeks, prior 2 weeks for our county will be pulled. A press release will go out on Tuesday telling what the new risk category is, if it changes, that would be effective on Friday. Is that correct?
That's my understanding too.
That's my understanding too.
What I wasn't really sure of is the dates when we get all that information, but the framework you described is exactly what's in the executive order.
Well, I think it's important that when a press release goes out tomorrow, that it's a warning, it's an indicator, it's not changing the risk level, but that process will occur next week. If it changes.
Yes, correct.
Okay, thank you.
All right, moving on under commissioner reports. Commissioner Hall, anything to report?
I don't have anything that either we haven't already discussed or I might have coming up later. Thanks.
Commissioner Hunt, anything to report?
Well, a couple of things. I'm involved, as I think you know and many know, in the maritime sector and the initiatives there. And there may be a possibility that some CARES dollars that the ports have could be directed towards some training programs for the maritime industry. So it's a thought that I'll be pursuing, and I just wanted to share that information. And on a personal note, it was 34 years ago today that I had my last drink. And it's been a good decision.
Congratulations on that. The only report I would share is that I did apply to be on the state vaccine distribution committee. So that's going to be a state-wide committee. There's actually 2 state committees being formed around vaccines. One is more of health-centric, I guess I would say, you know, doctors and that kind of stuff. And the second one, which I applied to be on, is more about distribution and making sure there's an equitable distribution system. So I did apply to be on that. And I think there might have been some nonprofit partners in our community that applied as well. So hopefully we'll end up with someone on that committee representing Lincoln County and the coast. And that's all I have to report. So with that, I think we'll move on under decision and action item. Order number 1220, appointment of the Association of ONC Lands Designee. Council Belmont.
Commissioners, this is an annual undertaking that you do to have a commissioner that serves on the ONC Lands Committee, which deals with our properties, the ONC properties that the county has. The county is one of 19 counties that has these old ONC railroad lands, which are managed by the feds, but we have a lot of input into how those lands are managed. And so we've been meeting, this is something that's been in place. The ONC Lands group has been in place for at least as long as I've been around the county. So I think that what we need here, we have an order, we just need a motion to make the appointment.
Well, I'll move to appoint Commissioner Jacobson to represent us at the Association of ONC Lands. I will also note that historically, I believe Commissioner Thompson fulfilled this role, and I think Commissioner Jacobson, as was the case with Commissioner Thompson, has kind of a natural interest in natural resources. So the appointment of Commissioner Jacobson makes a lot of sense for several reasons.
And I would like to second that motion for the reasons that Commissioner Hunt cited. Chair Jacobson,
All right,
do you hear the train coming down the track?
Well, I've already been on this committee since taking office 2 years ago, so
Yes,
I think we have to do this
This is
every
actually
year,
a
every 2 years. Yeah, so reappointment. So yes, I do hear that.
Excuse me.
Yes. All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All right, motion carries. Thank you. All right, next up, authorization to negotiate professional services agreement with Ernst & Young LLP for consultant administration accounting services related to COVID-19 and Echo Mountain Complex fire emergencies. I'm really, really happy to see this on the agenda, as I do feel like we have really needed some kind of help in navigating through FEMA speak on these various disasters we are in. So that's all I will say for now, and I'll let Council Belmont take it from here.
Thank you, Chair Jacobson. And yes, the combination of these two declared emergencies and the activities surrounding them is really beyond the scope of what we've ever done in Lincoln County in the 35 years I've been here. So first I want to send out kudos to our staff, Sheriff's Department, Emergency Services, our finance staff, my staff especially, and the Board of Commissioners staff. You know, we've stepped up and done what needed to be done on a whole bunch of fronts to both respond to the emergency and then work on the recovery. But we're at a point where this is beyond our capabilities internally to do all the necessary work we do to ensure that both the county and the citizens of the county are recovering from these particular emergencies in appropriate fashion. And because it does involve federal funding, it involves a lot of rules, regulations, procedures, processes that are not things that some of the things we do on a fairly regular basis, but especially around emergencies and dealing with FEMA, is not something we deal with on a day-to-day basis. So we've been searching around for some outside assistance, consultants who have experience doing this kind of work, and we've checked around, and we've had discussions with Ernst & Young, which is actually was one of the big accounting consulting firms and has been for a number of years, and found that they have a great deal of experience actually dealing specifically with fire-related issues. They represented, for instance, Paradise in California in their FEMA recovery efforts. And they have that in-house expertise to guide us where we need to go. So what we're proposing to do is to have you do a motion to authorize us to negotiate a professional services agreement with them to assist us. They're going to do some scoping work with us. They're going to assist us really on a whole variety of things. One will be putting together what's known as the public assistance request that goes to FEMA. They'll scope us on what kind of administration we need to put in place. They'll guide us towards which of our activities are reimbursable on the federal system and which are not, and how to best line ourselves up to get that reimbursement and those additional funds. We're talking about some, at least in the fire arena, post-mitigation grants, and of course COVID has been, you know, a whole different world. So I do want to work with Director Christina Shearer so we can make sure that one of the things we have worried about internally here is making sure that we're doing all the appropriate accounting for everything we're doing on all these different fronts and all these different projects, so they can also assist us in providing services to make sure that we're in line, not only for receiving the funding, but are accounting for it on a go-forward basis. So in checking around with others, this seems to be the firm that has the capability of doing it. They actually, we've got a preliminary proposal in front of us. We want to shape it a little bit differently than what was proposed initially, and then go forward and see that we can't negotiate an agreement with them to provide those services for us for, again, both the COVID-19 emergency and the Echo Mountain Complex fire emergencies.
Thank you, Council Belmont. I guess one of the things I would really like to see the scope as well. There's some really, broad things we know we need help on, like that public assistance. I also would like to see at least some time written in, because it seems to me like we have a lot of one-off type of questions, is this type of expense reimbursable? Could we do this? Types of things. And so I would like to see at least some time in that scope of work just for those one-off type of questions. It seems like we often need somebody with some of that experience just to check in with before we move forward, so we can understand what potential costs we might incur or not incur on doing something. So that would be something I'd like to see, is really that kind of advice piece in there on some specific things as we move forward. And I can't even necessarily tell you what those specific things are, because things just have a tendency of coming up as we go.
And we discussed that with them in terms of especially those kinds of things. And they do provide, that's part of the consultant services that they would provide to us.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Hunt?
I would just echo what Commissioner Jacobson said. I think if there's a broad overview as part of the expectation, I think that's positive, because a lot, we don't know what we don't know until we know it. So certainly that. And you already answered one of my questions, Council Belmont. We picked Ernst and Young to go into this negotiation with, because they've got a track record of being effective. We have any idea how long this contract might be for?
That's one of the questions we had for them too. What we were looking at doing was entering into basically a contract for the remainder of this fiscal year. So it would be through June 30th, and then with an extension into the following fiscal year, and we'll see where we go from there.
That would seem to make sense. Finally, where's the funds coming from to pay for this?
Well, right now, this is money that we're going to have to, I'm going to have to sit down with Director Scheer and figure out where we're going to go for this particular funding. One of the questions that we've posed at the front end is are their fees, for instance, reimbursable? We think that actually they will be reimbursable. The administration and this kind of activity normally is reimbursable. What we don't know is, and we're going to have some discussions as part of the negotiation process, is how much of it's reimbursable. And because we're leaning into COVID as well as into the fire, there's really going to be two different potential pots of money that could be used. But that's one of the things that we will be front and center with our discussions and negotiations with them. So we may have to front some money. That's unfortunately with FEMA, that's what happens with a lot of things, is you end up fronting money and then you get reimbursed later on. And that's one of the things we want to understand as we go forward and do the negotiations.
Well, I'm okay or comfortable with fronting money that gets reimbursed. I am concerned if there'll be an expense that has to be taken out of the general fund. That is a concern. And I'd like to know in advance if that's what's going to have to happen.
And at this point, I don't want to say that's an absolute for certain that that's what we're going to do. Right now, I think we're leaning that direction, but I've got some other ideas. I just need to talk to Director Scheer.
Okay, well, I'd like to keep me informed, please, and thank you. That's all I have.
Commissioner Hall?
I'd also like to be kept informed on that point as well, but for the reasons already discussed, I think this, really makes a lot of sense. Frankly, we've got a lot of money flowing through the county that certainly, 9 months ago, we would not have expected to be in the position of receiving, utilizing, or distributing these funds. And so if this can help us better manage these funds and also potentially access other funds that can help us help the community, then I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, I would just add in closing that while we are in a very tight, restricted budget right now, the county, absolutely, I am worried that if we don't get some professional help in navigating through some of this, it actually is going to cost us more, potentially in lost reimbursements, if we fill out a form incorrectly, if we categorize something wrong, if we don't believe something is reimbursable. so we don't capture it, and it is, and those types of mistakes that frankly just need some expertise. So I too would like to kind of be clear about, where that money is coming from as we move forward, and what percentage of this those consultants think is actually going to be reimbursed. But I am also equally worried that if we don't spend a little bit of money on sorting this out, it's going to cost us more in the future.
Yeah, for the record, I did not mean to imply that I don't support the expenditure. I did mean to indicate that I'm concerned about all general fund expenditures.
A legitimate concern.
Noted. Yeah.
So this is a decision action item. Could I make a motion that we, I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, can I get a motion? That's great.
Yeah, I was going right there, Mr. Belmont. I would like to move that the BOC authorizes staff to negotiate a professional services agreement with Ernst & Young LLP for consultant, administration, and accounting services related to COVID-19 and the Echo Mountain Complex fire emergencies.
I'll second it.
All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All right, motion carries, and after it's negotiated, that contract will come back for us to take a final look at and approve. All right, on to order number, again, 1220, authorization to proceed with Lincoln County Small Business Emergency Grant Program. We had this on our agenda on last Monday and provided some, guidance to staff to move this forward. I know we've had lots of emails from constituents and chambers and others asking when this is going to be out. So I'm hoping before we actually proceed with this order that Council Belmont, you can kind of provide us an update on, most importantly, when these funds are going to be out, how would people apply, that kind of a thing.
Thank you again, commissioners. And first off, I want to say thank you to a number of our partners who really helped us put this together in an incredibly short period of time. Northwest Oregon Works, our WIB representative, Heather DeSarge, and her crew are going to be actually taking in the applications, helping us process those and getting the funds out into the community. Dave Price has been of innumerable help on all kinds of levels here with this program, from the Small Business Development Center at Oregon Coast Community College, and including helping us put together the actual application that we're going to be utilizing for this process. Our staff, Janet Harrison, has done an incredible job of pulling things together and keeping us all on track. And again, a very short turnaround for doing this, and many others who have assisted on this. So I want to say thanks to them first. So again, this is the state of Oregon put out $55 million statewide and allocated under a formula, an amount to each county, to really help small businesses who've been negatively impacted by COVID-19 restrictions. They put out some sideboards for what we can do, some eligibility requirements, and actually that includes some specific direction as to who is ineligible for these funds. And we've incorporated all of that into our program. We actually have an application developed. It will become live pending your approval. This very simple application. We've tried to make this user-friendly so that people can provide us with the information we need in a very short period of time. We can make some decisions on how to allocate our money and, again, get this money out into the community. The expectation is that all the money will be distributed before December 30th of this year. That's to meet the requirements of the CARES Act, which is the source of funding for this. But also that's part of the idea, is getting this turned around quickly and the money out into the community. So I don't know, Christy, can you give Janet presentation rights? And Janet, why don't you pull up the draft application we're looking at? And I'll talk a little bit about the program. So what does this do? Lincoln County has a little bit over $900,000 that we're going to distribute into the community. Eligible businesses have to be located in Lincoln County. They have to be small businesses with 25 or fewer employees, for-profit businesses. And there are businesses that are currently open and financially viable. So that's kind of the basic requirements for eligibility. They also have to have been negatively impacted between a period that is established under the contract we have with the state as between March 1st of 2020 and November 30th. So they had business interruptions that were caused by the COVID-19 emergency, had a decline in profits during that period of time, may have put out additional expenses in order to comply with some of the restrictions that are in place. The way we're going to measure this is we're actually asking the applicants to give us a profit and loss statement that compares 2019 with similar periods or like periods in 2020 to show us what those actual losses were. So Janet's pulling up for us the application form. It'll be available and can be done online. Very simple application and explanation. We've identified 3 tiers of funding that will provide for the small businesses here, and that is those that are let's say either self-employed or have a single employee. Up to 3 employees will be a tier, the first tier. Second tier will be 4 to 7 employees, and the third tier will be larger employers that have 8 to 25. And we have we're recommending that are the top end of the cap, depending on the number of applications we get. We may have to adjust those numbers. That's one of the things we're going to seek advice and recommendations from you, is being able to adjust those depending on the number of applications we have and the criteria that we want to do. That includes looking at a regional distribution of these funds. We'd like to get this money out to businesses all across the county, not concentrated in any one area. I do want to note, just to make sure it's clear, that this is available to businesses inside the cities. This is not a program just for the unincorporated areas, but for businesses inside the city. We're looking at prioritizing based on, we want to look at what caused the decline in revenues. How is it tied to specific state or local executive orders? Service reduced or closed during this period of time we talked about here. We want to look at that as a priority. We want to look at the amount of decline that actually is shown in the profit and loss statement information that's provided to us. There is a focus generally on the hospitality, but it is not by any means limited to that. And we also want to look at where we can assist with payroll reductions that have been made within all sectors of businesses in the county. We're going to look at whether or not the applicants have received any local, state, or federal aid, but that is not a disqualifying factor in them getting aid. It'll go into how we set priorities for who gets funding, but it will not disqualify anybody. And again, we wanted to look at a regional basis here. We want to try and find and provide funds to businesses in all areas of the county. Now, the state requires us to do some additional things, which we will do. We're going to do outreach to minority women-owned businesses. We're going to use our partners at the tribe and in the Latinx community to get the word out on the availability of these funds, in addition to using and the Small Business Development Center to provide information and market the program out there. With $900,000 of funding out there, I wish we had a better feel for how many applications we might see. We know that some of the programs locally that have done had many more applicants than funding was available at the amounts that were set. But we also know some of the other programs that had pretty stringent requirements for application or incredibly short timelines did not get as many applicants. And in fact, there one program we had with Business Oregon, we ended up giving money back to the state because the applicants either couldn't or didn't qualify in an appropriate time frame here. So I anticipate we're going to have the former problem, not the latter. That is that we will have applications that probably exceed, both in terms of numbers and the amount of money requested, the amount of money we have available. So we're going to have that tough job of figuring out how to allocate that money. What we're proposing to do is to have the staff will actually work with representatives of each of the communities out here, each of the cities. We're lining up city managers to discuss applications within their boundaries or adjacent to their boundaries. so that we can learn from them, any information they have about these businesses, and most importantly, whether or not those businesses received any local funds that were provided earlier on in the year to address these same kinds of issues. And then if we come back, what we're looking for is some direction from you as to, in the allocation decisions we make, we could simply say, we have a fewer number of applicants and a greater number of money going to each individual applicant, or what we've put in the application language in here in the terms and conditions is that we reserve the right to reduce the amount. So it's not that you get a set amount of money at the different levels that you can apply for, but rather we can reduce that money to try and distribute it out to a broader array of businesses across the county. Although we are recommending that in no case do we allocate less than $1,000 to any qualifying business. If we get down to the level where we have more applications or more requests than $1,000 would provide, then we'd have to actually choose and prioritize, and some applicants would get no money. That's sort of the outline of the program that we've put together. There's some additional features that are required under the contract with the state of Oregon, including some demographic information that we have to provide. Small Business Development Center will be a focal point for assisting people in filling out the application. Dave Price and his crew will be available to do that. Heather and her folks will be available to answer any questions about processing and ensuring that applications are received. And then our office will take any of those kind of generic questions that fall outside of that to try and get this going. Our timeline is quick. We intend to put these applications out and available, and we do have them. I should say we do have them. We actually have got translation services, so they will be available in Spanish. And there'll be an opportunity to fill them out and submit them in Spanish. The applications, again, will open up tomorrow. We will take them until 5 p.m. on Friday, which is December 11th. Actually, it turns out that's a longer period of time than some of the other application processes we've seen in various areas across the state, but a shorter period of time than we would really like. But I think we need to get those applications in so we can process them and get the money out before that December 30th deadline. And we would look at having them fully processed and decisions made by December 18th, and thereafter get the checks out to folks so that hopefully they will receive them before December 31st. So that's the general outline of the program. The order that is in front of you basically authorizes us to do this process. I do want to make one note that actually, if you approve this framework, staff will be making the final allocation decisions. We'll work with Northwest Oregon Works to make those final decisions and actually allocate out the money. We will come back to you with a list of the recipients and the amounts that were awarded when this is all completed. But again, very quick turnaround on time for doing this. So we're seeking that authorization to move forward. So I'm ready to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Council Belmont. Thanks to all the staff, both within the county and partners. And I know we've had some partners and city managers and stuff. So thank you to everybody for working hard for our small businesses to get this out the door. I just want to reiterate that we're planning on hopefully having this up tomorrow, correct? Yeah.
If you authorize this today, we've got these along well enough that they will be up and available tomorrow morning.
So if you are a small business listening, be ready to apply. I guess that was my message. I am okay with the framework. I'm glad we're having this translated into Spanish. I think it's an important piece that is ready to go as well. I guess the only thing I would say as far as a question, I'm okay with the framework, is where is this actual application going to be housed? Is it on Northwest Works website? Is it on our webpage? How do people go find it tomorrow?
There's going to be links in multiple locations. So we're going to work with getting information out to the chambers, so you can actually go to the chamber website. There'll be a link to the application. And the process, the way it works is, however you get to the link, once you fill out the application off the link, you push a button, it submits it to Northwest Oregon Works, and then they will process it from there. So the SBDC, our own website, we're working with Casey
Okay,
to make sure. So there'll be multiple locations, and it'll simply be a link into the application. Fill it out, provide the additional paperwork that's required as part of the application, push the button, submit it all.
and I'm assuming that Casey, you'll be getting a press release out on this too, assuming that we pass this so that people can know about it that way as well. All right, moving on, Commissioner Hall.
I'd like to thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to echo your thoughts in really thanking staff and partners for pulling this together very quickly. I really like the framework. Really like the simplicity. You know, we have really prided ourselves, I think, on streamlining various funding application processes, and this one, I think, is about as simple as we could make it. I guess I want to ask a question from a constituent, and who's, when she heard the initial announcement from the governor's office that this money would be coming our way, she said, well, why small businesses only? For instance, that she works for a restaurant company that has multiple locations in the county. The total workforce, she said she wasn't sure the exact number, but definitely exceeds 25. And yet the employees of that firm have, even if the owners have somewhat deeper pockets and somewhat greater degree of resiliency than a mom and pop, that it's really impacted the employers pretty directly, you know, whether they have 26 or 2 coworkers. So any thoughts on that?
Sure, I can address that, because that is a question that we asked ourselves too as we were putting this together. And I think that the response was that there seemed to be a lot more programs that were available on a state or national basis, and even some of the local programs, that those that had the larger kinds of businesses really have some of the other additional capabilities of accessing those funds, that those were much more accessible to folks who are in the larger sectors of the business than the truly small businesses here. And one of the things that we've been hearing is that these smaller businesses, including sole entrepreneurs doing this, have not had the same kind of access to funding, don't have the same kinds of resources to fill. As we talked about, some of these application programs where the turnaround was incredibly quick, to do these things, and just didn't have the resources to really access the money. So I think it's a policy choice to make, but that was the idea behind it, is to really, the backbone of our economy is small business, and this is a definition of small business here. Some may disagree with that definition, but this is one definition of small business. And I think that was, in order to get these funds out to the smallest of our businesses, this is what was proposed.
Okay, I think that's the only question I've got right now.
Sorry, I was muted. Commissioner Hunt?
Well, I certainly support the idea that there have been, I think, many programs that are accessible by larger organizations which have the infrastructure to react quickly and to apply for those funds. So I like the idea of small business and limiting it to 25 employees or less. Couple of questions, and this goes back to my days as a banker. We have contact information, and if you scroll down, I can't do that, but it just says name. I think we want to know the owner's name.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the bottom somewhere, I think whoever's completing the application, I'd like to know their name and title.
Those are both changes we can make.
I think that's a good change, because you could very well have someone not the owner filling out, the application on your behalf or something. So that would be nice to know. Yeah.
Up above, all we would need to do is add owner or owners, '(s), name. Keep scrolling down just a little bit more, Oh, Oh, wait a minute, you got,
There it is. Oh,
okay, it's already been made, changed. Good job, whoever, is that,
that might be Dave or it might be Janet. One of them is making the changes as we speak.
all right, well, whoever did that, very good. Talk about being nimble on our feet. Excellent. And then again, at the bottom, I think we should know who completed the application, what their name is and what their title is.
There it is. It was already there. Name of person completing application. I just saw it.
Can we add title?
We can add that in.
Please.
We'll get that in there.
Yeah, that's fine. All right.
And just for the record, this is Janet Harrison talking. Is Dave Price is doing that during the meeting. He's watching the meeting and doing that as we speak. So thank you. Thank you, Dave.
Well, it sounds like a great teamwork. Thank you, Dave.
Thanks, Dave.
Janet.
Title right there.
Last thing, perfect.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think it's been clear through Council Belmont's description of the program, but I have had people that were saying, well, is this gonna be first come, first serve? No, it's an application and Council Belmont has described the process through which the allocations will be recommended to the board. That's all I have.
And I just want to note, in terms of, and I should clarify that just to what Commissioner Hunt said, is that actually under this order, you would delegate to staff to make the awards. We would come back and report to you. So it's not a recommendation at this point. We would actually, based on this framework that you've given to us, we would make the awards and then come back to you with that information.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to go. I think it'll be much more expedient to have staff do that and commissioners where we have to notice a public meeting and that kind of a thing. I think getting the money out is really important here. So I think if we're done discussing, I think it's time for, oh, I see Rebecca raising a hand.
Yeah, if I could just ask a quick question, because public health is apt to get some questions. Like if we got questions about people wanting to apply for this, who do we send them to? Would that be Northwest Oregon Works or somebody over in?
No, it'll be, actually for technical questions, we'll have them go to the Small Business Development Center. Dave Price will be, and actually we're also going to get some information out to the chambers so that the chambers can assist people in that process. So if there's those kinds of technical questions, that what they call Northwest Oregon Work is to confirm that their application was submitted after they submitted an application, or if they're having some kind of problem with pushing that button and it doesn't get there, then they contact Northwest Oregon Works and they'll get back to us. And then anything generic beyond that, you can refer them actually to our office. That's 541-265-4108.
So is that information available then on this application someplace?
It is going to be available in the materials that go with the application. Will be on the websites. So all that will be there. Yes. Contact information.
Great. Thank you so much.
So I have a follow-up question. When I made the comment that we would be approving it, I was remembering, I believe Council Belmont said that we may have to make some determinations as to what size or what number of applicants. Is that going to be done by staff?
You would actually authorize us to make those determinations. So right now we would use the numbers that are in there in terms of the grant amounts. It's a not to exceed amount in there. And if the number of applications allow us to provide that amount of money to each of the applicants that qualifies, we'll do so. What this would do is if the applications and the amount of money requested exceeds the available money, then you're authorizing us to basically reduce the amount that each applicant might receive in order to get a broader base of applications that we fund. But in no case would we drop anything below $1,000. But yeah, we would be making some choices based on this framework that you've approved here to get the money out into the community. Very similar to what we've seen in a number of other programs.
Yeah. All right, I'm comfortable with that. Thank you.
All right, with that, if there's no other questions or comments, I think we need a motion.
I'll move to approve the order authorizing authorizing staff to proceed with Lincoln County Small Business Emergency Grant Program.
And I'll second that motion.
All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All right, motion carries. All right, if we can go back to the agenda. Great, thank you, Christy. Next up under discussion and information, planning for replacement of Yukona Bay Bridge. And I think Commissioner Hunt might be presenting on this.
Sure. I was contacted by Derek from the city of Newport, charge of planning, and the city is working on an update of their transportation plan, and part of that would include long-range planning for replacement of the Quina Bay Bridge. This is actually something that I've discussed with ODOT and the city and with the Quina Bay Economic Foundation. And at this point, Derek is putting together a letter to, I guess, alert ODOT with the need to replace the bridge, and is asking for our support in that process. And I would suggest that we have Council Belmont work with Spencer Nebel and draft a letter that is acceptable to Council Belmont and the city of Newport, and we can either sign the letter or be a part of the letter that's joint between the city and the county.
Well, Madam Chair, I think in the last iteration of our packet for today's meeting, there was a draft letter already included with a proposal that Mayor Sawyer and Chair Jacobson co-sign it. And at least I reviewed it, and I would be comfortable as long as Council Belmont didn't have any objections with at least giving informal authorization for Chair Jacobson to go ahead and sign.
I'm fine with that. I looked at the packet that was updated and I didn't see the letter, so I missed it. But yeah, I think all we want to do is.
Yeah, things have flown fast today, as they often do this year.
Well, again, I think all we're trying to do is say we support the city in the effort to replace the bridge. So however that's best accomplished is fine with me.
Yeah, so Council Belmont, do we need a formal motion, or can we just have a consensus to shortly sign a letter, have me sign on everyone's behalf? How do we need to procedurally go ahead here?
I think what we can do here is, if there's a consensus for the chair to sign a letter of support. I do see some minor changes that I'd recommend in the letter, and this was a draft, but the gist of what Commissioner Hunt was talking about, the specifics, we would stick with that, but just a couple of small changes. But if there's a consensus to authorize the chair to sign this on behalf of the board, then we can move from there. Just let the record reflect there's that consensus.
Okay.
I'm laughing. If there's a way to make this bureaucratic, we seem to be doing it.
All right, well, I think we do have consensus here, so we will go ahead and move forward, and I'd be happy to sign a letter. Obviously that's a very long-term project that would need a lot of outreach and process and all of that stuff. So just for the people watching, obviously we know there's a lot of discussion that needs to happen here. This is just simply a letter encouraging ODOT and the state to start thinking about that process, hopefully before not too long here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, moving on into our public comment. Starting last week, we kind of did something different with public comment, and at least quickly went through it and just acknowledged the public comment that was received, so people that made it know that it was received by us. So I will have Christy, I think she's driving right now, bring up the public comment. And this is where it's found. And so the documents we received this week for public comment include from Alan Mitchell, Bob Johnson, Brandon Johnson, 2 from Heidi Gilbert, Jill Stone, Tracy Burks, and there's a public health COVID case update. So that's the public comment that we received. And just a reminder that when you go to make a public comment, There's a smart sheet right there. You can see it, kind of that second paragraph down under constituent input, and fill it out directly. So thanks for those of you that submitted public comment this week. Oops. Let's make sure our smart sheet is working there. Oh, we might have a problem with our smart sheet. Well, we will have Christy look into that and make sure it's up and running. So, all right, with that, I think if there's nothing else from staff or commissioners, we are at the end of our meeting unless someone has something else they would like to add. Nope. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and adjourn. Our next Board of Commissioners meeting is Monday, December 14th, 2020 at 3 p.m. and again on the virtual format as we have been doing so for quite some time. Meeting is adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all.
This conference is no longer being recorded.